Good evening and welcome to the first episode of the Liz McMullen Show. I'm here tonight with Nell and Trinity, who are newly engaged and also lived in the village during the storm. We are also joined by their bulldog, Merlin, who has been in on the action from the start as well. So I wanted to hear what your experiences were like, and I'll also talk about my personal experience. You guys were here for the storm. You were in Manhattan for the storm.
Yes. We both were living in the West Village, so that's downtown Manhattan. And
although it's considered Storm Zone B, Flood Zone B.
Yeah. So, we didn't have to evacuate.
We were not in the evacuation call.
Right.
Nor were we for Irene the year before either.
Right.
So we're like, I guess that next level. If it had been super storm, we probably would.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious storm, then you would have to leave.
Right.
So what was it like? I was actually in the Jersey Shore in Ortley Beach, which oddly enough, my town is the only town that people have not been allowed to return to. And the reason for that is that there are about 22 sinkholes. And Ortley is very small. We actually share the zip code with Seaside Heights. And I'd say maximum, maybe a fourth the size of Hoboken, which is a mile square. And originally it was an inlet for Tom's River. And then, this obviously a long time ago, and then eventually sand gathered and it became a town. And the problem with the storm was that the ocean merged with the bay, because it's an isthmus. So about 4 blocks away from my home is the bay, and about 5 blocks away from the ocean. And because it was such an inundation, I joked that it was like a river runs through it. There was literally a river running down my street. It flooded the homes from the floor up, and also created sinkholes because the sand beneath the asphalt was being compromised by the storm. And I didn't realize how lucky I was. I think, even though I'm from Hoboken, my husband is from Brooklyn. And I think our kind of New Yorker stoicism put us in a lot of danger, because we're like, Irene was nothing. This house has been here for in our family for 20 years. Nothing's going to happen. We'll be fine. And, it was windy on the Sunday. And we're like, yeah, it's windy, a little bit of, mist, nothing big. And around 8 o'clock I was texting, the next day, 8 o'clock I was texting with my friend Alex. I'm like, it's really windy, and there are little puddles around the periphery. Not a big deal. And Ilya was sleeping, and I was on storm watch to see if anything was going to flood our house or whatever. And then I looked out. She's like, "You're blind. There's a river out there." I'm like, "What are you talking? There's a river out there." And I went out on the deck, and there was literally a river of water going by. And in front of our house, the same thing. And it was advancing pretty fast, but, sick puppies that we are, we thought it was quite entertaining. But we were like, the floods are coming, let's get the food upstairs. And then it was advancing to where we had parked our car, and she had bought a lot of cases of water. I'm like, babe, stop organizing, because we have a mini fridge upstairs. Stop organizing, we have to get the water in the house. And so, I was holding on to the door so it would, swing off, because the wind was really intense. And she was running in. But we're all really entertained by the whole experience. And we're like, yeah. And we must rescue the electronics in my parents' room. So we got the flat screen, we got a router, and the direct TV thing, and we rescued my dad's guitars and my mom's jewelry towers. They're little freestanding ones. And I was like, this would be fun. And then we sat on the couch and we're watching the water advance, and we actually had white caps.
Wow.
But after high tide came, the water, we thought it'd come through the doors, but they didn't come through the doors. It came up from the crawl space.
Oh, interesting.
So we were, once we, got all the stuff upstairs, and we set up the dog's cage upstairs, so she had a safe place and gave her a little cave-like experience. She's a husky.
Right.
So we put a blanket over, and so she could snuggle underneath and be in her little zone. And then we heard bloop, 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 bloop. I was like, what is that? And I saw the rug develop a wet spot. I'm like, what is that? and then it started rising up from the rug.
Fast.
That's incredible.
It was really intense. I was like, I was not expecting that.
Like visibly fast.
Yes, like visibly. It was,
washed.
first it was, parts of our rug was damp. Parts of the rug was damp. Because we had tried to, put pillows and whatnot by the door to prevent things from coming in, but it came from underneath. And then high tide hit, and the water kept on rising to about the couch level up here.
Right.
And then it rose to the first stair, and then the second stair, because we have a second floor. And
when
then
did you move upstairs?
Well, we live our what I call our apartment part of the house is upstairs.
Okay.
So all of our stuff was fine. Nothing really happened to us. Actually, on the Monday, I was trying to sleep through the storm because it was getting freakish. Because you could feel the house shaking, and we were joking that the bed had magic fingers, like hotels.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is kind of scary. I'm going to sleep through this, and but nothing really came up. And she's like, what's this moisture here? And it turns out when she had insulated the windows with caulking, it was creating a barrier, so the water was coming in, staying in the sill, and then starting to go down. So she took her pocket knife, like all good Puerto Ricans who ghetto rig things, and she stabbed it open, and the water leaked out, and that was the only thing that happened to her. Once she did that and went to all the windows,
It was fine.
it was fine. The water could get out, but our space was perfectly fine. The problem with our like the downstairs part, there was like 2 feet of water in the living room, and there was 4 feet of water in my parents' room because it was a converted garage. It was converted before we bought the house, and it used to have like AstroTurf, and we had like bunk beds in there because everybody would come to the shore house. But my parents had 4 feet of water, and it was tainted water. It was sewage-tainted water. Because about 4 blocks from the house was a sewage treatment plant. And so that, and obviously this is a beach community. We don't really have much in the way of anything. So the water, as it became a constant, it created the water coming up that sewage. So we're not like seeing anything solid nor particulate, but you can smell it.
Right.
And we tried to rescue documents because I didn't want somebody looting the house and stealing my parents' essential documents, like to create loans and whatnot.
Sure.
So we rescued a lot of stuff. We put them in plastic bags, and when we decided to walk over the bridge to bring Raven, because like I said, they weren't letting the large breed dogs on the shuttles out of the island, that we were going to walk across, and we were lucky. Some cops saw us walking along 35, and they said, where are you going? And I said, well, we're going to walk over the bridge because we're not going to leave our dog, but we don't want to stay here. And it's not her fault. Like Raven, my little husky, it's not her fault if humans decided not to leave, so she doesn't deserve to be left behind. But there are a lot of people who are not given the choice, and I have no idea what happened to people's pets. But 2 blocks down, there was also like a pregnant woman. She was like 5 months pregnant, and she had her elderly mother, but she also had animals, including they wouldn't let cats on. And they had a large breed dog. So they, were talking in the middle of the mess that was left over. And she's like, I'm not leaving my animals.
Right.
And so the safest thing that we could do was walk along the highway because they had plowed it. And when we got to the AMP parking lot, which was like this central, command central kind of thing, they let us take Raven in an ambulance. And so we got across. My parents were waiting for us. And we got in the car, and we're, going up. And I'm horrified by the gas lines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then he's like, are you hungry? Because we had food, but we didn't have much of an appetite. So I was like, I can wait until we're a little further up. Because I was like, I don't want to wait with all these people around. And we went in McDonald's, and it said, you can have Coke, or chicken nuggets, or French fries, and that's your only choice.
Right.
Like they had taped, like handwritten notes. So that was my little harrowing escape. And then my mother, God bless her, cracked the window a little bit because apparently we smelled. Because
well, what are you gonna do? You hadn't been able to. So you've been up on the second floor.
Yeah.
And were you able, when you went down, how did you get down at all? Did things recede?
The water receded.
The water receded after the tide went out.
You know, and so there was just an inch of water. And the thing is, she and I are so lucky we didn't get some kind of opportunist infection. Because, like, I had been, you know, flip-flops at some point walking around, and I was like, in retrospect, that was not smart. And then I had these waterproof snow boots, you know, like the kind of duck bottoms, so that if you're walking in slush.
Those are great, yeah.
So we had that, and we were walking with that, and obviously, like, Ilya's brilliant. She decided to rig the hand truck. So we had 2 big suitcases, which is still all the clothes that I have. And we had 1 smaller suitcase with all the essential documents in it, and I've been in charge of the insurance claims, and we let them dry, and like only days after I was smelling the documents, I'm like, this is disgusting, because we went in the hope chest downstairs and tried to take out pictures and try to dry them out so that my parents didn't lose everything, because all their clothes destroyed because they're soaking. Their wedding furniture, they've been together for over 40 years, destroyed because it's soaking in sewage.
Right.
Yeah. There's no rehabbing.
Can't bring that back. Yeah.
So that was our deal. But what was it like being here during the storm that Sunday?
Well, so on Sunday night, I mean, I think the most interesting thing is that
the day was very normal.
The day was normal. You took Logan.
I took Logan to a Halloween festival at a park right down the street. And at first we thought maybe that's going to get canceled because of the weather, but we woke up and it was still nice out, and I was like, you know what, he's probably not going to get a Halloween otherwise. So, you know, I took him there, spent all day there, had a lot of fun. We came home.
What did they have going on there?
They had a hayride, so they had like this horse-drawn cart that was just going around the block. It's very weird in the middle of Manhattan. There's this guy in
what they can, you know?
with a horse-drawn cart, like taking kids around a block. They had face painting and those, you know, temporary tattoos. There are various stations where you can go and trick-or-treat for candy. All the stores up and down Bleecker Street, well, not all of them, most of them had trick-or-treating for the kids.
Great.
So the kids would go into the stores, and they were all dressed up, and they would do their trick-or-treating, and they would get their candy. Because otherwise, it's really hard to trick-or-treat for a kid in Manhattan.
Yeah, I would not feel comfortable doing that.
Unless you lived in a really large building that did it, like did the trick-or-treating.
Or if you're like on the Upper West Side, or, you know, different.
But you would never really leave your own building, because it's weird, because the doorman won't let random people into it. You know, so it's only if you happen to live in a high-rise apartment building that had a lot of people who are into it, then your kid can have a trick-or-treating. Otherwise, you go to the Museum of Natural History does a Halloween trick-or-treating thing. The Botanical Garden does a trick-or-treating thing for kids. And
that's cool.
It was canceled this year, but on Halloween Day, if you go to NYU, they have, in Washington Square Park, they have like a Halloween festival, a Halloween parade for the kids.
Good.
Right before the Halloween parade for the adults, of course.
Yeah, that's smashingly entertaining.
Yeah, of course, it got canceled this year too. So Sunday during the day was fairly normal, and then as the afternoon kind of wore on, the wind started to, you know, pick up, and we had the news on the whole day because we just wanted to know exactly what was going on. So then you got a call from Con Ed.
It was a pre-recorded message saying that they were going to turn off our power preemptively. So that it will be easier for them to get it up later when the storm passed. So we were prepared for it.
Right. So basically the thinking there is
they gave us like a 2-hour head start. They told us they were going to turn off the power.
Yeah. And they needed to do that in conjunction with high tide, because they were almost positive, and as it turned out, you know, they were right, that they were going to get flooded. And so if they turned everything off, then at least there wouldn't be, you know, explosions and electrical fires and things like that.
Yeah, my dad had told us to go and unplug everything. Because we still had time. Like the flash flood was pretty dramatic, but the actual depth of the water wasn't that big. And Ilya put on like grounded, you know, shoes and was just pulling out the outlets, because we didn't want for when the electric go back on to create a fire, because like the way that it looked when we finally walked around like 2 days after the storm, it looked like a selective tornado had hit the area. And there was a huge house in the middle of the street, because our home is very solidly built. But if you go from the water up beneath and you raise the bottom part of the house, and if it's just on pins and not something a little more secured in the middle of the street, because we're talking about sand, we don't have grass.
Right.
We have gravel.
Yeah, it moves. It moves.
And it was crazy. Like, some houses were cracked open, and we were shocked to see in front of our house, like, there's a TV here and all this other stuff. I was like, how did this get here? And walking around, their houses ripped open, but some houses pristine. You know, you wouldn't even know a storm happened. Then 2 houses down, completely demolished.
Yeah. It must be about having to do with the foundation and things, like how well that was laid and how stable it was.
I know,
and the sand and everything.
It's mostly the business down the shore is hospitality.
Yeah.
And it's beaches and whatnot. So you're not talking the most sturdy houses. A lot of times you're talking beautiful homes or, you know, things that work within that environment. But it just blew my mind. And Ilya and I walked up to the water, and there's no beach. There's just ocean. And I was like, oh, that's where the boardwalk was. And she's like, what are you talking where the boardwalk was? Right there. And it's just pilings. No planks. And we actually had some boardwalk planks on our property. And my dad a few days ago discussed why, you know, we weren't toast. And it's that there's the ocean. There's a street here in the center, and imagine 2 long ones that go completely from end to end from bay to ocean. So the water hit the first line of houses that was parallel to the ocean, and then had to get over the highway, another string of houses, and then our home.
Right.
So we were on 4th. If we were on 6th or 2nd, we would have been in big trouble. And I didn't have any fear except for during the day, that Monday, because the wind was intense. It was making the house shudder.
Yeah,
it was like, please roof don't rip off, please roof don't rip off, please roof don't rip off.
Yeah, we didn't feel any of that kind of shaking. I mean, you could hear the wind outside, you could hear the rain.
The tree that's right in front of our
scary.
building, and you can still see it a little bit. It had started to lean. And it was, you know, you could tell it was kind of getting heavy with the rain, and then the wind was pulling it, and it was starting to lean, and we're like, that tree's just not going to make it. In fact, we had a neighbor who was like, yeah, that tree's not going to make it. It did end up making it. There were a couple other trees around the block that didn't. Smaller trees, surprisingly.
Yeah,
that
a lot of big branches that came down.
But for the most part, like the weather part, we didn't feel so much. It was definitely the power outage, the fact that, you know, the utilities, and then just the completely, like, the feeling that you are just completely isolated. Because all the bridges and tunnels were closed or flooded, and any kind of public transportation was shut off, and you just realize how small of an island.
Yeah, you also realize that you're on an island. I mean, I think a lot of times you can forget that Manhattan is an island, and all of a sudden, you know, Mayor Bloomberg was on the TV saying that literally there was no way to get off the island or get on the island. You know, it was like, well, you'd have to do it. You basically have to walk, and no one was going to, you know, do that kind of. So it was more kind of. It was more in our heads, you know, just it was more psychological than it was physical for us. Because when the power went out, and it went out around, I want to say 8 or so on Sunday, we got a brownout a few times, and then it went off. And, you know, we were ready for that to happen. Our water never went off. Our gas never went off. So we counted ourselves really lucky. And those first 2 days, at least, it was very mild in terms of temperature. So we weren't starting to get cold yet. You know, we had plenty of food. I had done a lot of cooking that afternoon when they told us the power was going to come out.
Monday,
you know, I just cooked everything in the fridge, and we were well fed. You know.
Monday after the storm hit.
The storm hit Sunday night.
Sunday night through like Monday morning, early morning. Monday afternoon, we went out walking just to see what, you know, we could do and what was going on, and you know, there were. One of the things that was very interesting throughout this entire experience is just how resourceful, like, people and businesses were. Like, there were businesses that stayed, you know, down here with no power, who stayed open the the whole time in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
Like, so the bars would keep their bars open, but not cook. And then there were some places that were just trying to cook everything that was in their, freezers before it went bad. So, like,
Pizza.
There's a pizza place.
They
stayed open, and they were just making pizza.
Gas stoves.
The guy, there was a line out the door because, people were just, hey, if there's food, you eat it, right? So, because you never know, like, how long the stuff that you've got in your pantry's going to last. But I overheard the owner of that pizza shop saying that he had sold, like, I think he said it was like 150 pizzas in 4 hours.
Wow.
Which is, like, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at that time, because that was Monday, there were some Con Ed trucks that were parked around the neighborhood, and I went up and asked one of the utility workers, like, hey, so what's the damage? What's it look like? And at that point, they were already saying it's going to take 4 days at a minimum.
Right. And so then after that, we developed a routine. Once they got the buses running, because the buses came back first for obvious reasons, and then we would go up to, you would take Logan to your office.
My office.
Because all the schools were closed.
So everything
My school's
above
closed,
essentially like 34th Street, more or less, was just absolutely normal. Like, they never lost
Not
power.
completely normal, though, because, they had power, but
Well,
they
they
didn't
didn't
have
have transportation.
stuff. They didn't have transportation, and they didn't have supplies. Like,
Yeah, that's
no grocery stores. They would have random things, but they wouldn't have bread, they wouldn't have milk. Even if they had power, right, they wouldn't have those things, and they couldn't resupply those things because the bridges and the tunnels were still very slow to come back.
But it was more normal-ish. They never lost power. So for them, the storm was an inconvenience, but pretty mild. So during the day, we would go up to my office where there was internet and there was electricity. We would charge up all of our things, spend the day in the electricity, and then come back at night. And it was we had to bring flashlights because by the time we hit about 23rd Street, everything was dark. And even walking down the street, you just need a flashlight. Getting into the hallway, going up the stairs, you need a flashlight. It's just things you don't really think about.
Right. When it started getting cold later in the week, we started. It's not great for the apartment, but at that point, we just needed to stay warm. We started just boiling pots of water, just heating the apartment with steam, essentially, and it worked very well. But it's not great for your walls to have constant moisture in the air, right? So we're glad we only had to do that for a couple of days. I would only go out at night with the dog, and Trin and Logan would stay inside because I was a little scared. The whole neighborhood is dark, and I was a little worried about looting and things like that. Never had any kind of threat made, never felt in danger, but I did hear anecdotally from some people that even in this neighborhood, there were some times when someone was held at gunpoint and mugged. So people were, and the 6th precinct is like a block away. So people were taking advantage of the darkness to do stuff. The scariest part in some way was the traffic. There were no traffic lights below 23rd Street. And so the cars would be, barreling down, and they were not giving way. And pedestrians needed to, cross. And so you had some people who just kind of couldn't seem to get it through their heads that they were going to need to slow down and stop and let people cross the street. It was almost like they thought that without the traffic
lights... It was almost
lights,
like they would see a pedestrian start to walk the street and they would speed their car up to try to beat the pedestrian across the intersection. That's what was happening.
That was really, in some ways, that was really freaky. I was like, why is this going on? Why don't people understand that, of course, there are no traffic lights. Yeah, and where are you trying to get to? The city is sort of crippled. So we were really glad to see, starting around, I think, Wednesday or Thursday.
I
think it was Thursday. The police began to have enough resources to start setting up crossing guards and flares.
Okay.
So flares at night, crossing guards during the day.
Okay.
And they would basically just have a lot more presence starting on Thursday so that they could kind of regulate and make sure that people weren't, crashing into other people. It was like that. And what we would do is every night I would take the dog, I would take both of our phones, and I would walk uptown enough to get a cell signal. Because we didn't have a cell signal in the apartment either. Some tower, went down or wasn't electrified or something like that. But if you walked up a few blocks, I would refresh our phones, get any emails that we had, and then bring everything back. And then we'd sleep. I was trying to do work by candlelight. I had some work I could do by candlelight.
makes you feel all 7 years ago.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Logan was fine. I mean, he kind of saw it as a big adventure, and that's good. He wasn't really worried about it.
I don't even feel like it really fazed him all that much.
It didn't faze him.
Like we boiled water for his bath, so he had like nice hot baths, and he took cold showers, which was not pleasant.
Yeah.
Well, that's the life. Oh, yeah.
That's all right. In the grand scheme of things, I mean...
No, for us, I can't remember if it was Alley Valley or if it was Jay and Redmond. But one of them were talking about fill the bathtub with water.
Did that too.
That totally saved us because it would have been disgusting if we could not flush. Mm-hmm. And the way I saw the actual event, being there and then before we evacuated, it was entertaining, then boring and inconvenient.
Right.
But it was never awful. I know that, it was harrowing, and also the fact that we could have been in danger, but I feel like, number one, we got out unscathed. I think I bumped my shin on something, and that was like the extent of my injuries, and we were fine, and we weren't in danger. Bless you. Excuse me. But there are other folks I have seen, and just how devastating and dangerous it is, and for us, because we had no plumbing, no heat, and no electric or anything, so we had no idea what was going on in the world and how it had affected things. It's like in my head, we're going to get up north and everything's going to be fine. We'll stay in a hotel, have a nice bath. Yeah, hotel. Yeah, right.
How far north did you go? Where?
Well, I have family near Rutherford, where the Giant Stadium is.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that area, so my aunt, she took us in, but I didn't expect any of this. I didn't expect gas lines that last 3 or 4 hours at a time, wrapping around the block. No, it's like it was kind of Jesus like us, and there's no room at the end. There's no place, even the slimiest, skeeviest places, because unlike Katrina, we're really densely populated.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just so wide sweeping from Jersey and Staten Island and Manhattan, Brooklyn, everything, and even going up the coast. I didn't think I was coming home to that, and for me that was more traumatic. And the first 2 days, at first I was watching the news, but then it would make me cry. Like, not like sobbing, but like, my eyes were weak. And I was like, I don't think I can handle watching the news anymore. It wasn't exactly, it's almost like a free-floating emotion, like no really thoughts behind it. And it was rough spending time in a very cramped space. My partner and I were sleeping in my aunt's office. Like, I was on the couch, she was on the floor, mostly because her back is bad, so she can't sleep on something that's not firm. And so we were up there, and like my father was sitting up in a chair, and my mom was on a couch. And it was just hard because we have a lot of strong personalities. My father and I, as teenagers, I was like the Clash of the Titans, like, I'm the alpha, no, I'm the alpha. And we were on our best behavior. And especially for my dad, he's not used to being on his best behavior, so it was very trying. And I got to the point where I was bent a bit. And so luckily, I have a friend who's a writer, Alex Trist. She invited me into her home. And then when my friends found out I was going to be there, Andy, who was one of the co-hosts for the cocktail hour, and my friend Adrian, they booked flights immediately. Like, I said, Alex, rescue me. She said, get down here, I'll help you. I took a train. They were price gouging big time. Normally it's $80 to $90 to go from here to DC. Mm-hmm. It cost me both ways $230.
Unreal.
That's illegal.
I know.
But it's Amtrak?
Yep.
Amtrak is like government, partially government.
And it's not a Sela. It was like the regular... Right. Yeah, the way there was over 100, and the way back was around 90.
The only reason they may have been able to get away with that is if there was such a demand of whatever they use. I don't know how those tracks run, but if they needed gas, maybe they were. I don't know. That seems like it would be illegal, though.
I'm sure. I have the receipt, and I was desperate. I didn't care how much that train ticket, because my partner and I would stab each other in our sleep. Like, we were just so, and I went there, and, it was, for me, it was like little camping, You know, we all were eating together and talking and went on trips and went to the zoo. So that was great, and I came back. And then I learned that one of my mom's coworkers from the past wanted somebody to house sit. So now I'm in this gorgeous house apartment, and it's nice and big, and it's a writer's paradise for me because I'm like, look at all the artwork and the high ceilings and the wood floors. This is amazing. And when my partner came in, she's like, there's no TV. There's no cable. And because we're dealing with a lot of deprivation, because we also would have selective electricity, and for whatever reason, connectivity and emails and whatnot, I had to go outside to make a text work, and sometimes I'd have to retry 2 or 3 times. And
we have nothing in here.
I think the isolation was what was really driving us batty, and also isolated because we can't drive the car around to do things or see my niece, who is not too far away, because the gas lines. So I felt like trapped and disconnected, and I didn't realize how much time I spend on the internet or interacting, like on Skype and whatnot, that it was just, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. You know, and we wanted to move into Brooklyn, and we will soon. But I wanted infrastructure to be working again. I wanted the trains and buses to be working again. I didn't want to deal with the gas lines. Part of the reason why I wanted to go to D.C. is they were untouched by the severity of what we were dealing with in Jersey. So everything was functioning properly, like public transportation, gas. Like I could actually get in a hotel, whereas here there's no hotels and there are waiting lists, 15 people long, from a regular to an extended stay. So we were working with FEMA that was really responsive, but there was no place to spend it on. Mm-hmm. Like our car was totaled. We had permission to get a rental car. We couldn't get a rental car. You know, we had rental assistance from FEMA that went straight into my mother's bank account. There was nothing to rent.
Right.
So that's what's been shocking for me. Not the actual experience of being down there, and I learned after the fact how much danger we were in and how that was really not fun. But my partner and I were joking, and she said, we made it through. I said, yeah, it's a zombie apocalypse without the zombies.
Yeah, that's it. That is what it feels like. Yeah, I agree. That lack of connectivity was interesting. I kept getting mostly news whenever I would check our phones, whenever we could go get a signal somewhere. We'd get news from friends. You know, friends would say what the news stations were saying about the storm, and that was really interesting. Just hearing it kind of secondhand. And where I work is up in Rockland County, and so they got hit badly also, mostly because they have above-ground power lines, like most places, and all the trees went down. It's very heavily wooded.
That was one fortunate thing. Down the shore, the trees can't grow. Yeah. You can have conifers, but they're not, like green, evergreen trees, but they don't get very high. So we didn't have the fear of a tree crashing on our home.
A lot of my colleagues were very afraid of that, and some of them had experiences where one woman's husband was in the car for some reason. I have no idea why he would be in your car, but okay, he was. And a tree crashed onto the car and missed him, but he was in the car when the tree fell on the car. I mean, apparently it was really, really bad for those reasons. And the lingering problem that I'm facing now is one of, fortunately, it's just one of inconvenience, which is just that the trains still aren't running the way that I need them to. The trains are running for most people because most people commute into New York City and go back out. Okay. But the train, Hoboken, as you know, is still not up. The train station got really badly flooded, and the path of the train. Yeah, I saw some
video feed of water pouring into it.
Did I show you that?
No.
I need to show you that. It's crazy. So yeah, the water just poured into that path station. They haven't gotten that up and running yet, and until they get that piece back, so Path and Hoboken back to Secaucus and the rest of the New Jersey transit system, I have to basically drive to work. A lot of people have to drive to work, but what it does for me.
You work in Jersey? I thought you worked.
No, I work in Rockland County.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I have to drive, kind of.
So right on the border of New York and New Jersey.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. So usually I take New Jersey Transit to a train station, and I have my car parked at that train station, and then I drive the rest of the way to work. Now I just have to drive back and forth every day, and the problem with that is, it just deprives you of, in my case, about 3 hours of work time a day, and so that's been really tricky because now everything at work is super compressed because we lost an entire week of the semester. Everybody's
And
freaking
around
out.
midterms.
It's around midterms. Yep, everybody's just really freaking out. There's a lot to do and no time to do it. The students are really anxious. A lot of them had power, that didn't come back on for more than a week. So it's a very kind of high stress environment there. Mm-hmm. Whereas here at home, at least everything has kind of gotten back to normal mostly.
That's good.
So, and you guys, so you're not going to go back into the house at all?
Today was the first day that people were allowed back, but it was a shuttle. It's a school bus, and you're allowed to go into your home, and you have a certain period of time where you can be there, but you're only permitted to bring a carry-on out with you, something that can fit on your lap as you're in the school bus. Take photographs for the purposes of insurance, and luckily for us, we had photographs during and after the storm of all the different things. A lot of people don't have that opportunity, and so they're going to be. My father's going to be able to be there. I'm sure it'll stink to high heaven, and it will be hard on him because my dad. They had just finished renovated their room. Like the rugs went in a week beforehand, brand new, beautiful rugs.
Oh my goodness!
And he had put in a chimney, and all the fireplace needed was decorative marble, and it would have been done. And so they lost all of their clothing because it was saturated with the tainted water. And their furniture that they've had since they were married. Luckily, we had the presence of mind to save one thing, which was the grandfather clock, and it was at a part of the house in the between the living room and the dining room. And so Ilya and I picked it up and we put it on the couch, and the water never got to the top cushions of the couch. And because it never got up there, we rescued that. We rescued my mom's jewelry, my father's guitars, because my father used to be in folk bands when he was a hippie. My parents were hippies. And so, I said, I tried to rescue some things for you, Daddy. He's like, just for morale. And he's like, this is more than morale. That's so important to me, the guitar. So, it's just a matter of getting in there and getting things. And for Ilya and I, when I packed, I wanted to be practical because we were having to push it on a dolly in order to get up and over the bridge and whatnot. So I had a large suitcase. Ilya had a large suitcase. We wore similar clothes. So we brought all of our warm clothes. Couldn't bring boots or anything like that. But I imagined, once they take away the debris, we're going to get back there and we're going to get our stuff, which has not been the case.
Right.
And so when I was visiting my friend near D.C., she took me to Old Navy, so I bought, warm pants to wear. Because I had pants, but not a lot of them. Because it's like a short community. I had tons of cargo shorts, but I didn't have a lot of pants. And I needed to get a new winter coat. I got lucky at Burlington, got one for $30.
Nice.
But my good one, obviously, is still there. And I bought a pair of winter boots because I'm moving to Brooklyn, and I grew up in Hoboken. So when the snow comes, it's not just the snow, it's when it becomes slush. And so I needed to get a good pair of boots so that when it finally does snow that I'm protected. But that's pretty much it. My life fits in one suitcase. Yeah. But the concept of the robust middle class, I'm fortunate to be a part of it. So we didn't have to live in a shelter. We lived with my aunt in a really nice, safe neighborhood. It was inconvenient and somewhat uncomfortable only to have one bathroom, one toilet to share, amongst people. And I'm the only really able-bodied person in the house. So my father's got bad knees and whatnot, my mom's bad back, and Ilya's got bad knees and back. So going up the stairs just to use the bathroom was hard. And you never realize that, you have a lot of personal space, in our quote-unquote apartment at the shore, the part that was ours. I had an office, a large room that was mine, and, my shelves and whatnot, and she had the bedroom with large, big screen TV, and so we had our own corners, so to speak, and we like our independence as much as our togetherness. We've been together for nearly 8 years. So we went from that to having a room about almost half the size of my office, and having to have all of our stuff together, and we were like a disease infiltrating my aunt's house with all of our toiletries and our clothes and clutter, and messiness, and I tried my best to be tidy, especially I have very long hair, so I'd wait, I'd clean out, make sure no hairs in this, in the bathtub, but I mean, still we have options, like my father, hi Merlin, like my father has friends that he kind of has been spending time with. He teaches psychology, so he's been able to teach us stuff and kind of float from place to place. I got lucky to spend time with friends and then house sitting, so we have some space. Yeah. And Ilya and I bought a new car because ours was ruined. So now once we get the grills put on front and back, because if you're familiar with driving and parking in New York area, people play bumper cars to get into spots. And one of the things that aggravated me about our other cars was getting scrapes and whatnot on the bumpers because of people being a little inconsiderate when they're trying to shove themselves in space. So the new car, we're having big bars in the front and back. We're protecting our bumpers.
That's a good idea.
But until they're installed, Ilya can't go to Brooklyn because she doesn't want to risk it. But once that's done, she can be in Brooklyn, or she's been hanging out because if we do get back in the home, we want to be able to help my parents get back on track. I'm not moving back down there. I didn't like it. I'm a city girl, and it was a beautiful neighborhood near the ocean. People were lovely. We had a great home, parking, no longer driving around the block to try and find a space. But for me, it was very isolating. I had my one friend, I was on Skype with her a lot, passively. She's working, I'm doing other things, but we still had, conversations, and I had other friends I was in touch with, but I didn't have my lifelong friends. I didn't have my favorite bar to go to if I feel like going dancing. I didn't have my coffee shop that I like to go to. And I didn't realize how much I missed it. And about 2 days ago, I did my 6-mile walk for the first time in a long time. And it goes from Hoboken to Weehawken to West New York, and it's along a promenade. So instead of having to cross streets, you're like going along like the brick pathway, and you got the view of the city. And I was walking, I had a lot of energy, and then I cried for most of the walk because I just missed it so much. I missed New York City so much, and I didn't realize how integral to who I am New York is for me. I've tried to move away at different times. I've tried to move to New Orleans and wine country in California and New England, and I realized, no, I need New York. And it's not just any city will do, I learned. But I need New York specifically.
It's a special place.
It is.
Yeah.
So what brought you to New York now?
Trinity. Yeah. Well, I was born in Rye, which is in Westchester County, a little bit north.
So you folks have been hearing Merlin having some lovely bone chewing, and now he's panting and licking us.
He's panting into the microphone.
That's okay. He was here during the storm too. So, he has to be a part of the process.
Sorry about that.
I don't mind.
He was kind of freaked out, actually.
How did that go?
Really hyper for,
Was he crying a lot?
He wasn't crying. He was...
I'm getting kisses.
Lots of kisses here. He was, when I would walk him, he would be really agitated. He would bark at me.
How did he feel about other dogs?
He always feels good about other dogs. He always likes to go out and play with other dogs.
All right, that's enough. Come on. That's enough French kissing today.
No more kissing. Come on, relax. So he was, but and then during our almost a full week of having power out, so we lost power on. Now, I wish you guys could see this. Trin is like hog-tying the dog. That's kind of what she's doing.
That's excellent.
She's being the alpha.
You show him.
Yeah.
You show him his boss.
So he during the week where we didn't have power, the 6 days I guess that we didn't have power, he was cold. You could tell he was cold.
Okay.
And we ended up putting his jacket on him because it got very cold. I mean, during the middle of that week it started to get really cold. And so he was very calm when we didn't have power, but right before and during the storm he was kind of agitated. So he was fine.
Yeah, and Raven was all up in my grill. Yeah. And my husky, I joke, she's more of a cat than a dog because she doesn't come when called. She'll give you affection if she feels like it. She's very independent. And she was on me like white on rice. Like she was following me around the house. This is before flooding happened. Like she would snuggle up on my lap, give me kisses, and
My understanding is that they feel the change in pressure.
They must.
Pressure,
they must. And I think Huskies are very attuned to weather because of their breeding.
Right. Makes sense.
Because they're bred for storms, but not these kind of storms, snowstorms. Although we had, some thunder snow here.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
Well, yeah, and then there was the nor'easter a week. And
how was that? Because I wasn't here for the nor'easter. I was actually going south to D.C. at the time.
What was interesting about the nor'easter is that it kind of felt like salt in the wound. It sort of added insult to injury.
Exactly.
Because, first Sandy came through, and that was devastating. And then the temperatures dropped, and that was really dangerous for all the people who didn't have power and who couldn't.
And the dampness, that was the thing. Like, we had layers, but because the house was so damp, it was really cold.
Yeah, it got really cold.
And what I feel bad for a lot of folks who are displaced or experienced the storm in an extreme way is that it's hard to get warm.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of energy out of you.
Yeah, and for me, I think that I have privileged problems, like, the inconveniences or not having connectivity and whatnot. But there are people who had nothing. Absolutely nothing. And even still, like, I'm trying to shake the emotional lassitude, because even though, like, I'm not focusing on any particular thoughts or whatnot, I've just felt so incredibly exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
Even after, sleeping, and it took about 3 days for me to be, like, when I was near DC, to have an appetite. I had to force myself to eat. And it was just, stress anorexia, I guess, but I'm like, okay, I have to eat, I can't not eat. And then, I got a few good nights sleep under my belt, and I'm doing well. Like, I love the apartment in Hoboken. It's very quiet. I've been sleeping great through the night, but still, there's just exhaustion.
Yeah. I think there's like a psychological sort of weariness. We were feeling that too. Just being, you're in the dark, you're without power, it's hard to connect to your family, it's hard to connect to your friends. And you also are aware that there's a lot of other people suffering out there, suffering way worse than you are. I mean,
absolutely.
What's interesting about Manhattan is that the big issue for the people downtown was not what we were going through, because we were well taken care of. We had water, we had gas, so we could do pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem was the people in luxury high-rise buildings, because they had nothing. And the reason for that was because the water has to get pumped up to your 20 or 30 or 40 story
by electricity, electric pumps.
And that's not the case in our walk-up, our 6th floor walk-up. So they were really, and picture an elderly individual on the 25th floor of a building, completely in the dark, no water. Whether they have gas or not, you don't know. And so it was that sort of community where, less able-bodied individuals were having a really hard time in these high-rises.
Yeah, I worry about those folks. I worry about families, mothers with their children.
Yeah.
And that's why, even though I've had this, like, malaise of just feeling so exhausted, I'm like, I don't have my children upset and screaming and crying. I didn't have to stay in a shelter.
Right. No, I feel lucky. I agree.
And the other thing that I was mentioning to my friends, and it's very normal for this area, for people who grow up around here, is that families live close to each other.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Like, one of my good friends from high school, she lives a few blocks from her mother and a few more blocks from her brother. So I imagine this happened in places like Staten Island,
right,
where their entire families, there was no refuge.
Right, there wasn't.
Because all of you are affected the same way. Like, my household that I grew up in was where my mom grew up, and there used to be like 3 generations in the house. And that was always true of this house. So I left my only home to move down the shore with my family, and so my mom left the home she's been in since she was 6, and to start, this was their retirement. They only, finished with escrow early July, and this was their time. Like, my mom retired this year, and my partner and my father, and sometimes myself, mostly them, lots of manual labor trying to get the house from being a summer home to being a proper home. And just as, all of the fruits of their labor were coming together, the storm came. And my dad said, I just don't have the heart to deal with the insurance stuff. So I've been my mother making phone calls, and I've been in charge of it. And FEMA's been amazing.
Now, that's what I've heard. I've heard that from a lot of people, that FEMA is like on it.
Like, I applied in Saturday morning. By Saturday night, I got one phone call for like people who want loans for small businesses that's available, or even if you're trying to get loans to, to get your house back together. And then by Monday, we were approved for rental assistance because we were displaced, which, as opposed to people who are affected,
right.
People who can't return to their homes are considered displaced.
Right.
So they gave us 2 months of rental assistance, and I think a decent amount of money. Like $2,800 is reasonable, really reasonable for the size of the family, because my mom had a primary residence, and she's one of the people in the deed, and all 4 of us were living there. And I thought that is extremely fair, for getting a rental, if there were rentals to actually do. So instead of renting a property separately, we're giving my aunt money. Because imagine going from being single and living, by yourself in a home and very frugally, very watching everything, to having 4 big adults, the water, the electric, the gas, and all that kind of stuff. And just the feeling of being overwhelmed, from being, very, very private to having to navigate with very different personalities. So it's different. How have your family members from far and wide, have people been contacting you, trying to see how things are going? Were they concerned?
Yeah, our friends and family were worried. Trin's family is really far away, so you can talk about that. But my parents are in Lambertville, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
So they're relatively close. Now, they lost power for longer than we did. Mm-hmm. So they didn't get power back for, I think, almost 10 days. And we got power after like 5.5. And so that was really hard for them. And I kept telling them, I said, you're welcome to come here, but they needed to work.
Yes, so my father, that was his problem.
Yeah.
He would have, been staying with 2 of his close friends. But since he's a professor and he teaches a few classes, he has to be able to come here. Because one of the things that he would have loved to have done was spend time with my Aunt Patsy, but she's in the Cape. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't be able to stay very long because he would have to work.
Right. So they didn't, I felt really bad that they were out of power for so long, but we couldn't really do much.
Well, they were also offered a lot of help.
They were offered a lot of help from friends and people at their church and everything. So they were okay. They were pretty well taken care of. My brother never lost power because he lives on 54th Street. Okay. So he would actually let me use his. So Trin and Logan would go to Trin's office, and I would use my brother's apartment for part of the day, just to have a spot to kind of work quietly. And so that was very, very kind of him. I think he wished he could have done more. After the first 2 days, it was really business as usual up there, and even down in Wall Street. He works for a bank, and so he was really busy, but he could offer me his space.
People were so lovely.
Really
people were concerned about red tape and whatnot. People were amazing. Everybody I spoke to was lovely.
Yeah.
Everybody I spoke to was helpful. And we were worried about being able to vote.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So how did that work for you?
I had forgotten because many years ago I had worked a polling location in Hoboken a few times where what they have in addition to the poll workers is they have one person from each political party that makes sure that the person that's voting is supposed to be voting there, has a right to vote there and whatnot, and just keep an eye on things. What I forgot about was provisional ballots.
Right, that's what they did here too.
So it was only possible for displaced folks. So I came and we actually had our new cards because we had just moved down there and I really wanted to vote in this election. It was very, very important to me for Obama to get a second term. It just was... And I was like, we can't let him win. We can't, let Romney win. That would be like the apocalypse all over again.
Yeah.
So, I was like, I wanted to, so the whole family, we voted and we found out, what you do is you get a provisional ballot, you show your ID, you prove where you're at, and then you voted. And then it was just such a relief to learn that Obama got a second term. I was I was just terrified of what our world would be like. And I was also concerned about people voting their frustration. But Obama was doing amazing. And I hate Governor Christie as a human. I think he's bad. He was phenomenal.
He was amazing too, though. I think
he was just amazing.
Yeah, he seems, in general, I agree. I'm not impressed with sort of his bombastic rhetoric and things like that. But honestly, like the way he stepped up during that storm, I have a lot of respect for him.
I just was like, oh my God, I did not expect him to be so amazing.
And he didn't want to engage in politics during that time. He said, look, I have millions and millions of people out of power. I have to take care of my state right now. I'm not going to pander to anybody at the moment. I just need to do
exactly.
my job. And that's whatever party you're in, whatever you believe, I respect that.
And also, one of the things that Obama did for Jersey in general is that he gave a directive to all, like, the people immediately working with him, that if there's a contact from New Jersey, there has to be a response within 15 minutes. Right. Not a solution, but a response. Right. And I felt so cared for, and there's just so much support, and really, I'm blown away. I'm really fortunate to live here. Yeah. So, Trinity, what about your family? Were they checking in with you? Were they concerned?
Well, they couldn't really, because my parents right now are most of my family is in the West Coast.
Okay.
My brother is there, my aunts and uncles are there. My parents are in Taiwan.
Okay.
So even further away.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, we communicate with them via Skype,
okay.
which we didn't have except during the day when I was in the office, but because there were 12-hour time difference, it just
it's too hard. I had a friend in Japan, and it was a 14-hour difference, and it's just so hard to communicate like that.
Yeah. So email was kind of how, and I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in Massachusetts, so power outages were just part of my childhood. And, every winter we would lose power for a couple days, a couple times, right? And so that in and of itself, like, my parents get pretty easily spooked by things all the time. They're, very nervous about me living in New York City, but with just power outage, they're like, oh yeah,
you're fine.
So, once a day or twice a day, I would check in, write an update email, CC everything.
Yeah, I was having a friend of mine do that on Facebook, like, because we had very little electricity and very little connectivity, especially when we were on one of the barrier islands. I had a single contact person who would update people on my page so that they would know I'm alive and I'm safe and I can't get in touch with you, but thank you for all your well wishes. So I want to pull in the interview to an end, and I just wanted to ask you, as writers, do you think that you would end up writing something inspired by what we've gone through with Superstorm Sandy, or do you think it will color your appearance, your perspective a little bit, or is it too far removed since you didn't have as much of a dramatic upheaval as some people in different areas of the coast?
I've been thinking about it. I'm not sure exactly what I would do, but I think that it was dramatic on a number of levels,
okay.
And of course, every story needs conflict and needs drama, and so that I think it's a kind of a natural a kind of natural setting for a story. And I don't know. I thought a few things. I've thought about perhaps having it be some kind of a character who had some family in one of the hardest hit areas.
Okay.
Maybe she's like estranged from her family or something, and then the storm provides a way to start to reconcile. Those are the kinds of things that have been going through my head. But it was very, very weird. I mean, to have a third of Manhattan dark, was just so odd. It's the city that never sleeps, and it slept. And that is that's a really interesting kind of time to write about. And so what I want to do at some point when I get the time is start to do research on other people's stories. And that's why it's been so fun to talk to you and hear what you went through.
Yeah, one of the things for myself, I've never been published, but I do write lesbian fiction. But I've decided that given what's happened to me, that I'd be interested in doing a nonfiction autobiography relating to it, because there are a lot of other factors that influenced my experience. But I'm also interested in interviewing people who have had something very disparate, you know, something much more dramatic, and just give a full-bodied approach to it. And you know, I'm excited about it because I didn't have a lot of things to entertain myself when we were trapped on the island. So I was like, what can I do? And I was like, oh, maybe if I get in touch with Nell and Trinity, they can tell me about their experience. And then I thought, well, J.M. Redmond and Alley Valley had the experience of Katrina, and it would be interesting to see the contrast and the difference of the topography, the different neighborhoods, and, you know, the nature of swampland and whatnot in Katrina to what our environment is like.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's something that I had in my head, and it's kind of been growing. But I've never done nonfiction, so it's going to be a little bit of, you know, a challenge for me. But I'm interested in seeing what comes out of it.
Sure.
I'm interested in seeing what comes out, you know, in the dialogue. And also, I've decided, instead of just doing regular interviews, you know, that I can take notes or audio, I want to video people who are willing to be on camera, or audio for those who don't, and put together a little bit of a documentary. It's a challenge because I haven't done any of those things, but I know that if I reach out to the right people, like I've been networking at Mount Holyoke, which is where I went to college, and I'm going up there in early December, and I'll go to the different departments and see if I can find, because I know that colleges are working a little differently now. And the Northern New Jersey Alumni Club in Jersey, of course, they had a woman come from Mount Holyoke who does distance learning and also teaches French. And for her final projects had been documentary-style movies.
Yeah.
So, like, I was like, that's a great idea. So I'm going to try and bring that together, you know, slowly putting little pieces, you know, one after another. And I really appreciate you guys inviting me into your home and taking time to speak with me and share your experiences.
Well, we hope that you get, you know, resettled as smoothly as possible. I mean, that's a really major endeavor, so let us know if we can help.
And we're happy that you'll be coming back to the city.
Yeah.
Yes.
You seem very excited about that.
Oh, I'm so excited to live in Brooklyn. At first, I was like, you know, there's not a lot of space. And I was like, New York City, my friends.
Yeah.
You know, Henrietta's my little happy neighborhood bar, and, you know, all my friends, childhood friends that I grew up with. And I realized that, I'm not moving back down the shore. And it wouldn't even be the same place to return to. As I said, the devastation blew my mind. I was 2 blocks, very short blocks, away from my home, and I thought, where am I?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, because there were debris in areas that, you know, just didn't even remotely look like 6th Avenue. I was just blown away. So I am happy to have spent this time with you, even though we talk about a very serious topic, and this is my first episode of the Liz McMullen Show. And I'm so woohoo!
It's inaugural.
And yes, you guys are my first go at it, and I really appreciate, you know, the time you've given me.
Well, thanks.
All right, great. Take care.